The abandoned asylum sat at the edge of town like a sinister sentinel, its decaying facade a stark reminder of the madness that had once festered within its walls. Legend had it that those who entered its forsaken halls never returned the same, if they returned at all. Yet, curiosity had a way of beckoning the brave and foolish alike, and it was this magnetic pull that lured Emily to the asylum's shadowy entrance one moonless night. Emily had always been fascinated by the supernatural, a trait she inherited from her grandmother. Stories of ghosts, hauntings, and the unexplained were a staple of her childhood. Her friends thought her obsession was nothing more than a teenage phase, but she knew better. She had heard the rumors of the asylum's dark past, of the deranged patients and the unspeakable horrors that transpired within. It was the perfect place to prove to herself that the supernatural was real. As she approached the wrought iron gate that marked the entrance, a cold wind whipped through her long, dark hair, making her shiver despite the heavy coat she wore. The gate was locked, but Emily had come prepared. She produced a set of lockpicks and made quick work of the rusty lock, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The asylum loomed before her, a sprawling, labyrinthine structure that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. Moonlight filtered through the broken windows, casting eerie, elongated shadows that danced like specters. Emily's footsteps echoed through the silent corridors as she ventured deeper into the heart of the asylum. The air was damp and filled with a musty, rotting stench. She had heard stories of the screams that had once reverberated through these halls, and she couldn't help but wonder if the walls still held the echoes of that torment. Her flashlight revealed peeling paint, broken furniture, and the occasional rusted restraint chair, each piece a haunting reminder of the asylum's grim history. Emily's footsteps led her to a door that was slightly ajar, and she pushed it open cautiously. The room beyond was pitch black, and her flashlight struggled to pierce the darkness. As she entered, a faint, muffled sobbing reached her ears. Her heart raced as she followed the sound, realizing that it was coming from a corner of the room. The light fell upon a young girl, her matted hair covering her face as she huddled in the corner. The girl's clothes were tattered, and her hands were caked with filth. She seemed no older than 12, and her eyes were wide with terror as she stared at Emily. "What's your name?" Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The girl's lips quivered, and she stammered, "Emily." Emily's heart sank. "I'm Emily too. Don't be scared. How did you end up here?" The girl's voice trembled as she recounted her ordeal. She had been exploring the asylum with her friends when they had become separated. Lost in the darkness, she had heard whispers and seen things that should not exist. As she spoke, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the room, and Emily's flashlight illuminated a ghastly figure hovering above them. It was a spectral, twisted creature with elongated limbs and a contorted face. Its hollow eyes fixed on the girl, and it reached out, its bony fingers inching closer to her. Emily's instincts kicked in, and she grabbed the girl, pulling her to her feet. The two Emilys ran from the room, their footsteps echoing through the corridor as they fled the malevolent entity. The girl clung to Emily, her sobs echoing in the darkness. As they raced through the asylum, they stumbled upon a rotting staircase that led to the basement. With no other option, they descended into the abyss. The basement was a nightmare. Crumbling, moss-covered walls closed in around them, and the air was thick with an unnatural chill. The girl's sobs had subsided into a terrified whimper, and Emily knew they needed to find a way out, and fast. As they explored the basement, they came across a series of cells, each containing the remnants of those who had once been imprisoned within them. The occupants, or what remained of them, were long dead, their skeletal forms a gruesome testament to the horrors of the asylum. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, and she had the sense that the spirits of the damned were still present, haunting the very cells they had perished in. A distant, otherworldly wail echoed through the basement, making the two girls jump. They followed the sound to a small, hidden chamber. Inside, they found a journal, its pages yellowed with age. Emily began to read, and the entries spoke of unspeakable experiments, of patients subjected to cruel and inhumane treatment, and of a doctor who reveled in their suffering. It was clear that the asylum's dark past held more horrors than anyone had ever known. Determined to escape, the two Emilies retraced their steps, but the asylum seemed to shift and change around them, its layout becoming a bewildering maze. They were lost, with no way out and a malevolent entity still pursuing them. As they reached the ground floor, they heard a cacophony of whispers, as if the very walls were closing in on them. The spirits of the asylum's tormented patients seemed to converge on them, their spectral forms reaching out, their voices filled with anguish and rage. Emily felt an overwhelming urge to flee, to escape the asylum's clutches, and she pulled the girl along. But just as they were about to reach the front entrance, the massive oak doors slammed shut, sealing them inside. The girl's cries intensified, and Emily knew they were not alone. The malevolent entity from before had found them, and it was hungry for their souls. It materialized before them, its twisted form a grotesque sight. Emily tried to fight back, but her efforts were futile. The entity's cold, skeletal fingers closed around her throat, and she felt her life slipping away. In her final moments, Emily saw a flicker of movement out of the corner of her eye. It was her grandmother, a spectral figure, her presence filled with warmth and love. She extended a hand, and a blinding light enveloped them, banishing the malevolent entity. When Emily awoke, she was lying outside the asylum, the girl beside her. The night had passed, and the asylum stood silent and still. The malevolent entity was gone, banished by the spirit of Emily's grandmother. The two Emilies clung to each other, their hearts filled with gratitude and relief. They had escaped the asylum's clutches, but they knew they would forever carry the memories of that night's horrors. The asylum's dark past had been revealed, and the spirits of the tormented patients had finally found their release, thanks to the bravery of two souls who had ventured into the heart of darkness and returned forever changed.